And there we are. Hello, welcome to Mary Walter Radio, the podcast. It is great to see everybody. This is not James. This way. This is not James. I have to go the opposite direction. I would have been terrible on the Brady Bunch.
For
This
so
is not
many
James.
reasons.
This is Howard Bernstein. So if you lived in Baltimore, if you lived in the DC area, at Pennsylvania, you know this man. He gets around apparently,
A little bit.
and he does it all. He is a news anchor, weatherman. I know him as the weatherman in Washington D.C., so that's how I know Howard. But he does everything. So
I have a DIYer too, by the way. I can
yeah,
fix
that was
most
the
things
other
around the
thing.
home.
Yes, and you also love technology, hockey, skiing, and home improvement projects, and you do have some
Pickleball
videos
is a
up.
new ad. Pickleball is a new add to the list.
So fun. Well, I'll tell you a pickleball story, but first let me do some business. So I am on the screen as the Queen, Howard, because our number one fan is Zach. And Zach just knows me as the Queen now, so we have to keep it as the Queen. And Zach is the son of the guy who does all my graphics for me,
Oh.
EB, who is phenomenal. He's so amazing. If I need anything for social media, EB's there, puts it together, and he does it for relaxation for some weird reason.
He's in your court if you're the queen.
Yes, he could. Well, James is my jester. My work husband is my jester. So you could be my you would be like what would you be? My what do they call, not a
Hmm.
wizard. Would you be a wizard if you
Hmm.
if you tell me what the weather's going to be? I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. What do they refer to Nostradamus as? What was his title?
I
Did he have a
don't
title?
know. I don't know.
I don't know.
No. So, but anyway, I don't even know who is Master Davis
Not
anyway.
no Nostradamus.
Oh,
No
Nostradamus. Oh,
Nostradamus. No, I
oh, okay.
pronounced it poorly. So
I'm
sorry.
like, who's
Nostradamus.
Master Davis?
You and my wife would get along just fine. She has this thing where she hears different lyrics, like
Uh-huh.
the song "My Eyes Adored You." Uh,
Yeah.
she thought it was "My Sweet Georgia" for some reason. I'm like, that makes no sense. That makes no sense. But so she has always heard things her way, maybe not the
I love
intended
that.
way, but that's fine.
Well, she's married to you. She's a good woman.
Even though her last name is Bernstein, I think she's going to be up for beatification at some point if she's
Yeah.
married to me. Yes.
That's okay. We take all comers. One of my besties, Rhoda Garfinkel, I got her praying to St. Michael's. I mean St. Anthony, so we're good. Because he helps her find things that are lost. So please subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. Please like the podcast. You can go back and see past podcasts. Just go to the I think it's the which section is it? The live section, I believe it is. Streams. Go to the streams, and you can watch some older podcasts as well. The audio is available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Just look for Mary Walter Radio.
You are
Uh,
legit. Look at you with all these things that you're doing.
it's legit in the sense of I do it for free and don't make any money off of it.
Are you
But I
having
want to,
fun?
yeah, we
Okay.
do. We have a good
Good.
time. This just, this is like doing radio without somebody telling me what I can and can't talk about.
And not having the clock and have to hit spots on the hard half and at top of the hour, and that's the yeah.
Exactly.
The
You
first
know the drill.
the first thing I ever did in media, I was in high school. I did an internship at WBLI on Long Island, 1061 FM. And I actually wound carts. I had to go take the truck out to get tickets to the circus. And it was scary. It's a long, big Ford Econoline. I'm driving this. I'm like 17 years old to go. And people are like honking at me on the highway thinking I'm like the prize van. I'm going to give them something. I'm like, I'm just trying to keep this thing from hitting somebody or killing myself. But
And
yes,
the vans at a radio station always look like they were
clown
sold at
cars.
an auction, and they used to be like a child abductor
Oh
used
no,
to
no,
have them, right?
this one was like a Ford Econoline, had the chrome wheels, had the nice paint job because I don't think they were wrapping back then. I actually think they painted the logos and everything
Right. Yeah.
on the truck. This was 1983, 84, whatever it was. So
Yeah. Back in the day, we're dating
a
ourselves.
day. Yeah.
Just want to thank some new subscribers. Michael McFarland, thank you so much. Ex Chef 2, Jason Anthony Collins, Constantinos, Frizz is with us, Tyrone Newman, and Stephen Redden. Thank you guys. Appreciate you. Please tell
Somebody
your
thought I was
friends.
Larry O'Connor.
No, did somebody say that?
in the comment section. Queens
Oh,
Raider.
wait a minute. Hold on. Here we go. Well, Bill's first. So Bill says, hello, Queen Mary. Queen's Raiders. I thought it was Larry O'Connor for a second.
Yeah.
Larry doesn't wear glasses.
So
So
could.
I don't. Yeah, I can kind of see it. I kind of get it.
He does a nice job, by the way. I think he's pretty clever.
He's very, he's definitely very clever. So, okay. And remember, if you leave comments on Getter, they're not going to come up on the screen. They've changed Getter though, so it might come up on the screen. I'm not 100% sure. If not, I will read your comments on Getter, and the other comments will go up on the screen. And we do that for the people who are listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because if we make a comment about your comment that you put up on the screen, they get really confused. So we try for that not to happen.
There's no screen for them.
There is no screen for them. Well, there could be, but then that's a bad thing while driving. So as I said, I got to know
multitasking, Mary.
It will also probably get you in a lot of trouble for the cops. So I got to know Howard just because we had you on the show a couple of times whenever there were big weather events, which in Washington, D.C. means like half an inch of snow.
Or wet snow.
That's right, wet snow. Yeah, exactly. And it was all melted by 10, but nobody went to work anyway by 10 a.m. So, and you're all over the place. We're going to go into the hurricane, want to talk about that. But I have to tell you, the career path to become like the weather guy on a radio station or a television station, what is the career path for that?
Well, the career path, things are changing so quickly, and TV news is now at a point where where's it going, right? More people are watching streaming than are watching broadcast and cable combined. That came out recently. So the struggle today, I don't know where the career path today is, to be honest with you. All I can tell you is when I was a little kid, if there was a snowstorm or a thunderstorm, my face was glued to the window like this. I just could not. I got, you get bit by the bug or whatever becomes your passion. At some point, you're like, oh my God, I need to do this. So as I tell people now, I'll put it even simpler. When Mother Nature gets pissed off, I get turned on.
Weather porn.
Yeah. So a sunny day is kind of a boring day to meteorologists, right? Because nothing's going on. I mean, we can enjoy a nice 70-degree day with low humidity like anybody else, but boy, when there's we had some thunderstorms a couple of weeks ago, which continuous lightning in the sky. And what's cool is my wife, I've known since high school, we're high school sweethearts. We were out on the front porch. We're out on the front porch just watching the sky just light up for half an hour until it happened. We grew up on Long Island, so sometimes we go down to the beach, West Meadow Beach, if anybody knows the North Shore of Long Island, and near Setauket and Stony Brook and Port Jefferson. It's lined north-south, so it looks west. So you get great sunsets. But if the storms are coming in from Connecticut or the west, you could just watch them roll towards you. And so we did this. I think she did this I'm her boyfriend, to humor me, but she has grown over the almost 40 years we've been together now, since high school.
Wow.
I mean, we started dating in 84. So yeah, almost 40 years, which is remarkable because I'm not 40 myself. But anyway, the point is, so I went to school to SUNY Albany. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I got a lot of interest. I stopped growing in 8th grade. So like pro baseball player, hockey player was out. And I did a lot with the drama club in high school, the theater club, a thespian, if you will. And I go to Albany, and they have I didn't know it. It was just Stony Brook in Albany. It was either 10 minutes from home or 4 hours from home. Albany had one of the better atmospheric science departments in the country. 1 out of every 4 research dollars was going to the Atmospheric Science Research Center at SUNY Albany in the mid-'80s. I was like, well, it's divine, whatever. It's just go. So I study atmospheric science, and I make a tape, and I do internship. I couldn't get a TV job. So I moved to Gainesville, Florida, taking a job with an environmental consulting firm. 6 months later, I found a TV job in New Orleans. And I spent almost 5 years in New Orleans learning more, almost an apprenticeship. Because what happens now is kids get hired, they get put on the air, and they're doing weekends or whatever. And I say this, and it troubles me, because whether it's DC or Baltimore or News 12, Long Island, which I have great memories from, or Altoona, I see so many places, doesn't really matter market size, where the coaching isn't happening, the teaching isn't happening. So kids are put on the air, and maybe they're not told exactly what to do. They can develop bad habits. for me, that didn't happen. I was the producer and fill-in guy for the weekend guy. So it was like an apprenticeship, which was frustrating because I want to be on camera, right? I'm a ham. I'm a social guy. I want to be on TV, right? And it wasn't happening quickly enough. But in hindsight, I think it was a much better way to go. Anyway, New Orleans, I ended up in Oklahoma City after that. Wow. Tornadoes, severe weather. You learn fast.
Tornado Alley. Yeah.
Swim, right?
Yeah.
And then my parents were getting older. And there comes a point where, I don't know, I got to this point, I wanted to be closer to them. And they were in Long Island and I was in Oklahoma City. So maybe twice a year if I was lucky. I said to management, I said, would you please allow me to get out of my contract so I can see my parents while they're still around to be seen? They graciously allowed me to do that. And not everybody's going to do that.
No.
But this wasn't a job satisfaction issue. This wasn't I hate you issue. You know, it wasn't anything except I really feel this pull to see my parents more while they're still around. And if you're a decent human being, and they were, it's like, how do you say no to that?
Right.
Anyway, so I get a job in Rochester, New York. Hey, lake effects, no. Let's learn about that, right? And that was interesting. 2 years there, not the greatest. I took unemployment with a pregnant wife at that point, as opposed to staying at that job. And a year later, I find a job in DC. A year.
Wow.
You know what? You know what's worse than having a job you hate?
Having no job.
No. Having a job you hate that you can't afford to leave.
Oh, yeah.
So you were close. True. You were close.
That's true.
But being stuck in a job that you can't afford to leave is the pits. It sucks. But then 20 years and change in DC, and just got to a point. And by the way, nothing but praise for Chief Meteorologist Topper Shutt. He was a great guy to work with for all those years. But what was once a great job was no longer a great job. It changed. I changed. It was just time to move on and try new things. And so, then life got in the way. Father-in-law dies in 21. And then in 22, Bruce Johnson, who was a good friend of mine, passes away. Yeah. Then my brother, my fraternal twin brother, passes away. We put my dog down. We move. Another friend dies in December. I mean, 22 sucked. And anyway, so now here I am, wondering if I'm retired or not. I'm going to do a little freelance weather coming up, though, at Harrisburg at WHP TV. I'll put that out there now. That's going to happen next month. So nice folks there. We'll see if the commute's okay. It's a little far, but if it works, I'll keep doing it, because I still think being on TV is fun. I still think forecasting is fun. I think making the graphics is fun. And if I can do that in the right environment, I'll continue to do that. Otherwise, maybe I'll look at being a news anchor. Maybe if I get a news management job somewhere, because there are a lot of challenges there. Mary, I'm at a point in my life where I'm looking to get out of my comfort zone.
Good for you.
How many people?
That's great.
But how many people don't want to get out of their comfort zone? They're just they're okay where they are with how much money they make, the job they do. It's like the guy who works in the factory for 40 years doing the same thing, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I'm not knocking that. That works really great for some people. I'm not that guy. I need challenges. I need, I have no attention span, so I need new things. Basically.
I was gonna say like a little ADD here, like a little ADHD, maybe a little bit, which is
my
great.
Wife wonders why I'm still with her if I've got no attention span, because I said you're the one, obviously.
Yeah. So all right. So I'm curious. You guys have been together since high school. All right. Yes. And so she stayed with you even though you were, let's face it, you're probably a little dorky, right? Because you're the weather nerd.
Yeah, but I'm a cool dork. How's
but
that?
It's okay. So you, as I tell my husband all the time, honey, you're the coolest of the dorks. Yeah. I'm like, you're a little dork, but you're the coolest of the dorks. And that makes him feel good.
How old from a maturity level would you say your husband is? Honestly.
It depends on what he's doing. Like for his profession, he's very serious. He has to be very serious.
Forget the profession. When he's just hanging out with you in the house, and what's his maturity level, age-wise?
I think he's probably right on track. Like I'd say, like in his 50s.
My wife would say 14, 15. I never got past that.
Yeah, no, he's definitely the quieter one. I'm definitely, you can't both be like you and I are. And you're higher level than I am. You're a little bit more keyed up than I am. But you can't have two people who are like that all the time. So like, when I do appearances and stuff, he's fine standing in the shadows, just watching, like
Oh,
holding my pocketbook. That
I'll
kind of
start a
thing.
conversation with somebody on the grocery store line, right?
Yes.
And my wife's like, "Why are you talking to them?" It's like, "What do you care? I'm talking to them. I like talking to people. It's okay.
Yes.
I don't know
I
them,
do
but
the
now I
same
do. Now
thing.
I have a new friend, and that's not a bad thing." But
Yeah.
so it bothers her some days. I'm like, "Why?"
Yeah.
So now,
Yeah.
good
He'll do the
question.
same thing. Yeah.
Gregory Houses, is there a particular application program product that you use to create the graphics? In television, there used to be a few more, but now there are basically two vendors that supply TV stations with computers to do weather graphics. One of them is called the Weather Company, which was just sold by IBM to some venture firm or something. I don't know. The other one is called Baron, and they have their Lynx computer. And AccuWeather had a computer for a little while, but they're not really providing that to TV stations. So you've got these two choices basically, and these are mostly turnkey solutions providing satellite, radar, data, graphics tools, the slideshow capabilities you see, and all of that. So, and then the TV stations will buy the hardware and then they'll pay a monthly subscription to these companies. And often that monthly subscription is based upon market size, with arguably the bigger TV markets having more money to afford than the smaller TV markets. So these companies, they have to make money, but if they price it too high, the smaller markets will never be able to afford it. So, they price it based on market size or something.
Okay.
I hope that
Okay.
answers the
Interesting.
question for Gregory D. Howe.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure. And if it doesn't, Greg, you just type in there. Greg's a regular. You just type that in
Okay.
there,
Yeah.
and I will do it. So I have a question. So for people who the people who study meteorology, right, or the weather, as we call it the weather, the meteorology. If they don't want to be on camera, they don't want to be a meteorologist on television or behind the scenes on radio or something like that. What else? What other can you do
Well,
with that degree?
you could get a job with the National Weather Service forecasting. You can get a job with somebody like Delta Airlines forecasting. You can get a job with power companies. And on the West Coast in particular, where you have fire concerns, like in California, the Northwest, knowing when to turn the lines off, hello, Hawaii
Mm,
Electric, whatever, knowing when to turn the lines off, because when there's, and they've got models, right? If it's so much wind, they know that the lines are going to be like this, how much they're going to move. And if the lines move so much, then they're going to run into the brush, and that could cause a fire with sparks. So depending on the parameters, they can actually they're going to say, hey, we got to shut the power off. And that happens in California to try to preserve. And then once the wind threat passes, they go with helicopters or whatever drones. They have to fly the lines to make sure there aren't branches on top of them, because you don't want to power up the lines with branches, because then they'll just spark and set a fire. So
right.
I sat through a seminar on this at some ski weather conference, and those are the best, by the way, because you have
Oh
a
yes. Yeah.
conference in the morning, you're skiing in the afternoon. This one was at Heavenly, and that
Oh
place.
sure.
Have you ever been out to the Reno area, Lake Tahoe? My one time, oh my God, it lived up to its name. I'm just telling you that it's a tremendous place to visit and ski, and I loved it. But I also learned, so it's really kind of a really cool thing.
And it's a great tax write-off.
Yeah, if you go that way, but these are usually sponsored trips to some extent. So
Oh.
to me, if it's heavily discounted, don't take the tax write-off. Don't be a pig. Don't draw
Well,
attention to yourself. Because then they
doctor,
may
but
ask you.
well, my husband's a physician, so they're not allowed to get anything like that. They're not allowed to get
Right.
sponsors. Not allowed. They can't take a pen. They're not allowed to take anything. So if he wants to do something like that, we go skiing out west every year, and sometimes twice a year. And there is a wilderness medicine conference that a lot of the doctors will go to, because then you can write it off. But nobody's paying for it. Nobody's
Right.
sponsoring it. Nobody's giving you anything
Where
for it.
have you gone skiing out west? Because
We've been skiing Big Sky since
that's bucket
04.
list. It's a bucket list place of mine.
Yeah, you know what though? It's not what it used to be. COVID ruined it. California vomited into Big Sky. The Icon Pass ruined it. It's not the same. And then we skied Schweitzer in Idaho this year for the first time, and that was
I don't know
great.
that. I don't know.
I know. Nobody
I've been to
knows it, so we love
Breckenridge and
it.
Steamboat and
We've done that, done that, done
and
that. Yeah,
yeah,
we've done all that.
what was a cool? If you ever go up to Wildcat Mountain in New Hampshire, Wildcat is like skiing in the West, only because Mount Washington is literally across the road, so it's
Mm-hmm.
snow capped, and it's one of the few places out east I've skied where you've got a snow capped mountain, and out west you've got plenty of snow capped mountains, because you're
Yeah.
you've God, at Breck, I think you're almost 13,000 feet at the top of the Imperial Lift in Breckenridge.
That's high. That's almost two. I think Breckenridge is very high.
That's the highest chairlift in North
Yeah.
America. 9,600 feet is the base at Breckenridge. I
Yeah.
don't sleep well in that hypoxic environment. I wake up like every hour, like.
Well, we take a medicine that we take 24 hours before we go out to altitude if we're going high. Big Sky's not that high.
Yeah.
Base is like 8, it's 7, something like that, and the top is like at 9, so it's not bad.
Beta blockers. If you're taking beta blockers for blood pressure control, you're less susceptible to altitude sickness. And in fact, it's one of the things they give to people. So I take my son out there when he's like 16 and he's getting a little lightheaded, and there's this little pre-conference gathering party, whatever you want, a cocktail hour, and they have this oxygen bar. So they put the pulse ox on him to see what his levels were. It was like 78. His pulse ox was down to 78. Oh. So they hook him up, and 15 minutes later, he's back 92, 93. It's really tough. It's really tough to be much higher than that. I found, just because think about it. There's 1/3 less oxygen at like 10,000 feet than there is at ground level. 1/3 less.
Oh yeah.
So it takes time to adjust to that.
Yeah.
We're in a chairlift a couple of days later, and these doctors are skiing next to. They're from, I don't know, South America, and the guy says, when I have patients with a pulse ox in the 70s, I just send them to the ER.
You're like, he's 16 years old, he's fine.
He bounces back
right
like a scalding against a brick wall, right?
That's too funny. Okay, let's see. So I wanted. So your wife has put up with you, even because you're the coolest of the dorks. We got there. Let's. I find, and you're going to disagree with me, but I find that men are fascinated with weather, right, guys? Those of you who are watching right now, you love weather. Men love weather. My husband loves weather. The funniest thing so my husband has a little weather station on top of the garage, and he's got to curl up there every now and then because the seagulls sit on it and break shells on it, all this other stuff. So he's got to clean it out because this isn't working, that isn't working. But my husband cracks me up because he could tell me what the weather was from his weather station. Oh, peak wind was this. And he's, and he downloads all the information, especially if there's a storm. But yet he has to ask me what the weather is going to be tomorrow. So I have to get on my phone to look at what the weather's going to be tomorrow. And because he can't tell me what the weather's going to be tomorrow, but he can tell me what the weather has been.
It's funny you say that, because I was talking to somebody. They're like, what weather app do you look at? I'm like, I am the weather app. I don't look at weather apps. I go right to data. I just look at, whether it be tropical tidbits or pivotal weather, I'll just look at data. And
right.
They're like, what's your favorite weather app? I go, none of them.
None of them. Well, you're a professional.
But here's the thing, and let me just say this about weather app, and then we'll talk about the global warming thing in a second. Weather apps are just spitting out computer model data. That's why there could be so much variability from like 1 hour to the next, because, a new run came in, right? And if you follow any of this, there's variability. So you're not just going to react to one run of a model. Well, your app does. And, there's no human touch. I was at one of these conferences, and Rick Knabb, who you may know from the Weather Channel, is there. And I like Rick. Rick's a really good guy. And he was giving this talk on global warming. I'm sorry, not global warming. What was he giving a talk on? I'm sorry. I just saw my energy thing pop up, and I don't want my laptop to die. All right, good. Power's back on. It's charging again. I was on battery there. That would have been tragic, man. Anyway, so Rick Knabb at the time, Hurricane Center director, right? And he's talking about how much better the forecasts have gotten over the years, and how the forecaster, along with the computer guidance, because they know some of these idiosyncrasies and their own experience, they tweak they just don't go with the models. They'll tweak it. And it has gotten better, and it does perform better than just the models alone. And I asked him if he thought that AI, right? Let's get to the AI conversation. This is probably 5 years ago, when he thought that AI would catch up to the human forecast, or maybe eclipse. And I have utmost respect for Rick, but he's like, never. It'll never be better. I go, Rick, come on. And I disagree with Rick, because I do think that artificial intelligence will be able to crunch data. It'll be unemotional. It won't be tired. It'll look at analogs, and it will ultimately figure out a better way to do it. So I'm of the belief that AI is going to make our life better. I'm of the belief that automated driving vehicles that can drive me wherever I want to go will make my life easier and better. So maybe I'm an optimist, maybe I'm naive, but I believe that technology ultimately will be our friend, will be our savior, not the end of the world. So with that being said, let's talk about Steve and global warming, because
all right, yeah, this is Steve. Now Text USA says, Steve, global warming. Ask audience, would you complain if you were having a cocktail under a palm tree on the Hudson River? Fun fact: the high water mark in St. Augustine Fort is the same since the 1600s.
well, and now Tax USA, I'll take your word for that. I generally like to verify stuff, but I'm going to take your word for that. I've been to enough things, and I was, and Mary will remember some of the conversations. Perhaps I was one who was very skeptical. I'm a natural skeptic. So when all of this noise and the politicization of global warming came out, it's been politicized since day one, and we won't get into that. I was like, oh, well, then if it's politics, it can't be happening. There's an agenda here. But I went to enough seminars to realize that, there's, and to come to the conclusion on my own, that there's a preponderance of evidence of what man is capable of, as there are 7-8 billion of us as a species, to do to the planet and the environment. And yes, there are things we're still learning. Some of the projections clearly have been wrong, right? And even this hurricane that we're talking about, Idalia, in recorded history, and I never say ever, I like to say recorded history, there's never been a major hurricane, category 3 or higher, that's hit Appalachia Bay. It's either gone to the west or gone to the east, but Appalachia Bay, late tonight or a little more morning, is going to have a major hurricane for the first time in recorded history. Look, it was bound to happen, right? Tampa hasn't had a hurricane hit since October 25th, 1921, in over 100 years. They're due. It's going to happen. Might happen in a few weeks, might happen in 500 years, but at some point, Tampa's luck is going to run out. So to get to the global warming thing, when you realize and you look at things like how much more CO2 there is, or that we make more nitrogen commercially than all biological activity combined. We move more earth mechanically with bulldozers and stuff than erosion processes do. So these are things that you start to realize when there are 2 billion people in poverty in the planet. They don't care about climate change. They're not going to do anything different. They're worried about their next meal and where they're going to sleep. So when you have a poverty issue too, globally, which we do, all of these things collectively, we are just big enough. We have a large enough mass to actually affect the planet. And look, I don't like the argument saying, every bad storm is climate change. Hogwash, right? But there's a Hurricane Harvey, which dropped 60 inches of rain. If we're in a cooler climate, maybe it only drops 45, which is still epic, don't get me wrong, or 50. But there's probably it exacerbates the effect, I think, in some weather situations. So, yeah, I hear you. And the climate is always changing. And this is a question I asked. And we've had warm periods, we've had cold periods, we have ice ages, we've had meltdowns. Why now the hysteria? And the answer that I was getting from the experts was, hey, good question. Because when we go back to things like tree rings and carbon dating and looking at the ice cores that we can get from Antarctica, and they trap gases in there. And we do the best job we can to try to go backwards and sort of back test, if you will, what the temperatures were beyond thermometers. The rate of change, the warming, how quickly it's happening, is just something we haven't been able to witness anywhere, anyhow, at any time. And, I'll give you the argument, well, if an ice cube melts, it doesn't affect the height of the ocean, of the level in the glass. Yeah. But if the Greenland ice sheet melts, that water from land goes into the ocean. So now you're actually adding more. So the water levels have to go up. Also, hey, you heat stuff except for water. But if you heat stuff, it expands. You cool it, it contracts. If anybody's done DIY work, why do you caulk and not grout between the backsplash and the countertop or the tile? Because they're different materials and they'll contract and expand at different rates, and you'll get cracking of grout. So you use a caulk, which is more flexible. It's just expansion, a thermal expansion in and of itself is going to cause the oceans to come up a little bit. Where is it? The tidal basin. I don't know if you saw it, Mary. They're building all these seawalls now around the tidal basin. This is the American Restoration Act, one of these highfalutin, government expenditure things. But if you've been following what happens there, they get a lot of high tides that overlap the walk around the tidal basin, where the world famous cherry trees are in DC.
Right.
So these things, there are signs all around. And Here, I'll make it even simpler. And a guy named Jim White, who's a professor at Boulder, University of Colorado Boulder, he said, look, when we were growing up and we went to school, we learned about the greenhouse effect, right? We've got an atmosphere, it holds on to some heat, keeps us a little bit more temperate than if we didn't have an atmosphere. Like take the moon, right? Or Mars, much more extreme moves in temperature from day to night. So if we know we have gases that are certain greenhouse gases, water vapor being one, but if we increase greenhouse gases, doesn't it just make sense that we'd increase the temperature? I mean, very simple science. I mean, we're not politicizing anything here. It's just simple science.
So I'm looking at climate.gov. So this is a government webpage, and it's the estimated global temperature of the last 500 million years. And we're coming off of one of the coldest temperatures.
And one of the most stable periods also.
It's interesting because let's see, what is this? Okay, so 50 million years ago, the temperature started dropping, and it kept dropping, and then it went up a little bit, and then it just went down, 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 and now it is starting to go back up. But it's interesting because the lows are pretty steady. The last time the temperature was as low as it is now was about 375 million years ago.
And what were the, if you go back and you look at CO2 parts per million, right? And this is one of the things that, we talk about. So is CO2 an indicator or is it a contributor? Either way, when we've had CO2 levels this high in the past, ocean levels have been, I think, 20 to 40 meters higher than they are now. So okay. Jim White, if you ever get a chance to watch Jim White speak, he's really good because he puts things in very easy terms. He's not condescending. He's not one of these. Can I use off language here? What are the rules?
I wouldn't drop the F-bomb because we have the whole. We have to say it's not safe for children. Then.
All right. What about the slang term for rectum? Can I use that?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. So I came up with the term. Some of these guys are so full of themselves, they turn you off. They're PSAs. I call them PSAs for pretentious smug assholes. So you get some people who are PSAs, and they could have the cure for cancer. You don't want to hear it because they're such a turn off. I find there are people in the climate change world who are PSAs, and they could be really bright. And this is a lesson I learned in broadcasting. Sometimes you get a viewer email, and they're kind of, Joe Pags uses the term A-dub, if you ever listen to his show. They're A-dubs, and we'll put it that way. But I think it's for asswives. But if you get beyond the tone, often there's a point that's valid and should be considered. And my problem is some of these PSAs are such a turnoff. I don't want to listen to them. But they go out there and they have information. And if you can just get past that, some of it's actually valid. Jim White's not like that at all. Jim White would be like, oh, do you know about the Delaware, right? First state in the union?
Yes.
So get 20 meters is the highest, like 50, 60 feet, I think, was the highest point in Delaware. Mm-hmm. Well, he says with climate change and rising sea levels, first state in, it'll be the first state out. I mean, it's a good line.
I think we've got a lot of time as opposed to what AOC and everyone else keeps telling us, because we're in the part where it says world with polar ice caps. All right, so there's a line of the temperature and with polar ice caps, and in Fahrenheit. So the average global temperature Fahrenheit in the not so distant past was just above about 53 degrees.
But that's global. That's global temperature. When you go pole to pole, equator, everything in between.
Right. Exactly. Right. And it's interesting because the low back to 350 million years ago, whenever it hits a low, it always hits right about here is where it hits. So there seems to be a floor. And then when it goes up, the hottest goes about 90. The average global temperature was about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and that was back in about 400, let's see, it was about 375 million years ago.
If the average global temperature hits 90, we would have to live near the poles to survive. It would just be too hot in the middle.
Right. So but it hasn't gone past there. So the last time it got hot again, it was like 80, 85 was 100 million years ago. And then the next time it hit a high, it was down to about 83, and that was about 50
But
million years
remember what
ago.
I said, and it may not be in our lifetime.
And that's
If
not going
that
to be in our lifetime.
Right, but if that rate of change we're seeing now is greater than anything we've been able to piece together using scientific methods, that's when that.
Right.
So
Well, it doesn't look like we
how
really,
could
it
they?
looks like the,
So Scott's asking the question: how could they even know what it was back then? Really, come on. And
okay,
Scott,
hold on. Let me put that up
okay,
there. Let me put
yeah,
that up there.
right. So
Scott says,
Scott,
weather statistics from 35. I'm talking about weather statistics for 35 million. What is it? Or was it 300 million years ago? How could they even know what it was back then? Come on.
so Scott, the best way I can explain it, as I understand it, and please check this for yourself, by using these ice core samples and even tree rings and other things, but ice core samples capture the state of the atmosphere at the time the ice is frozen. And you can get ice core samples that are millions of years old down in the South Pole. So you take them out and you get it's like a freeze frame of the atmosphere. So they've done stuff like that to get a feel for what's going on. They also see in areas like you were saying, they have found evidence of palm trees or ancient oceans and other parts that are now frozen. That like
Right.
somewhere in the Great North. So there were great forests once and tropical forests. So yes, things change, things move. We know that we got plate tectonics, right? The Earth did not look like this 100 million years ago with the continents in different positions than they are now. So yes, there is some, I think, room for improvement, and there are a lot of things we don't know that we can't explain. I can get into the origins of religion and faith and not faith and all that if you want to get about unexplainable stuff. But the best we know today from a science perspective, right? And that doesn't mean tomorrow somebody won't have some other discovery, but we're always got to base our conclusions about the data we have and the facts we have today. And that's just life, right? You can't
Right.
make decisions about things you don't know. If you're speculating, you don't know. And fine, let's say they're all wrong, right? What's bad about having cleaner air? My son today asked me, Dad, why are people afraid of nuclear? Nuclear seems like a good answer, right? I said, they don't like the waste. They don't like the radiation. He's like, it seems to be a lot more pollution from, diesel trucks than nuclear. He's 23, by the way, and one of the smartest people I know. And I like the fact that he's asking me this question, but I'm like, look, there were 3 Mile Island, there was Chernobyl, there was Fukushima, and that was pretty bad crap. I think people don't like that. And, right now that nuclear, if they get the fusion working, right, what they're going now, then they source it. Then we'll have limitless power, basically, and
Right.
you will change the world. You will change so many things. You can desalinate seawater to give people fresh water. You can make all the hydrogen you need. You can set up CO2 scrubbers if CO2 truly is the problem that many people think it is. So, but it's about having cheap, clean, affordable energy as opposed to where we are now.
Right. Although the big polluters are China and India, and the United States is one of the cleanest
Yeah.
producers in the world, and they want to make us go even cleaner. Let's get to some of these
Okay.
questions
All
now.
right.
Could it be we are at the end of an ice age back to original prehistoric Earth? Which is better,
Yeah.
now or then?
It could be. Obviously, glaciers are retreating; they're melting. Could we be at the end of an ice age and just going through a natural warming? To some extent, yeah. But what impact are we having on that? That's where many people believe that it's called AGW for anthropogenic global warming, is exacerbating that. And you've got this record warm oceans, right? And that by the way, that 100-degree heat off of Florida that made the headlines a few weeks ago, that's like a sensor in like 6 feet of water, right? So sometimes somebody's pool in the summertime, it's been super hot. I've heard stories in Texas recently because they had a hellacious summer where the pool water is like 104. That's like hot tub level. I wouldn't go in I don't like it that hot. I mean, 94 is good. 104? No,
No. No.
but pool temperature getting that. But right now in the Gulf of Mexico, you've got mid to upper 80s, right? We like about 80 degrees to be warm enough for a tropical system. Well, you're in the upper 80s approaching 90. Yeah, you're super warm. So all that energy just feeds the storm. So that's why Idalia went from a tropical storm yesterday to a Cat 2 hurricane this afternoon, potentially a 3 when it
At
makes
3.
landfall late tonight. Yeah.
So just very quickly, there's another, if you go to climate.gov, they have an average 1850 to 1900, and they draw that line. What
Where are
was the
you? Where are you looking,
temperature?
by the way? I'm looking at climate.
Climate.gov, news features.
Uh-huh.
I went to DuckDuckGo and went to what's the hottest the Earth's ever been.
Okay.
And if you look at the 1850 to 1900 average, we are actually below temperature wise the average of 1850 to 1900. So, the idea that we're affecting it, we're still below what it was 1850 to 1900 when, there was a lot of industrialization going on at the time, but there are far more people than there are now, far more trucks and cars and polluting, spewing into the air, if you will, than there were then. But our temperature is still lower than that. And if you look at this over the global temperatures of the last 65 million years.
I just don't know where you're looking. I apologize.
Yeah.
So
I'm just, I don't want to get too into the weeds anyway. So let's talk about.
That's a little late for that, isn't it, Mary?
Yeah, you're on a roll, so I'm letting you go. Let's see. This is interesting. People are asking questions. That's good. I like it. During prehistoric climate, was there more vegetation or less?
I don't know.
What is the average temperature of the rainforest?
I don't know offhand. I just don't know. And it's, you speaking of the rainforest, man, those the Brazilians, they are just cutting the crap out of the Amazon. It just doesn't matter. And that's kind of a shame because that's such a unique ecosystem with species that only exist there. And it does drive climate too with some rain cycles and things that are going on. So warming or not, what's happening down there is just tragic, in my opinion.
But these are all things, I agree with you, and the average temperature is about 80 in the Amazon rainforest, average. So
that's why she's the queen, because she knows these things.
And I just looked it up. It's funny. I DuckDuckGo or I Bing and get my answer. But so I look at those things and they're screaming at me that I can't have a gas stove. I can't have a ceiling fan. I can't have a gas dryer. I can't
you and I
have
are going to
all this
agree
stuff.
that is very political and there's some control issues there, and that's just not practical. Some things are not practical. I think, look, I'll tell you right now, I think almost every passenger car should be a hybrid. Just because I get 50 miles a gallon on my hybrid. Right?
Yeah, I love my hybrid.
Right. Now, the technology's there. It's pretty good right now. Plug-in or all-electric battery cars, we got problems. We don't have the grid that can probably support it.
No, we don't.
Now, on the flip side, it could also act as batteries for storage at night if we go more solar. So it's not there yet. It's not mature enough to rely on it the way we are. But I think hybrid vehicles are mature enough to be reliable. And if you want to get the plug-in one, with some extra range for that, that's fine too. But a general hybrid, I think every vehicle right there should be a hybrid at this point. Now, I understand there's some trucks and you need the power that might have to be all diesel. You've got your towing or whatever the application might be. But I don't see why passenger cars shouldn't be hybrids, all of them. And that's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of choice. I'm like, buy what you want. I don't know. I like we have a hybrid and we have gas. I will never own a full plug-in because we have friends who have them. They got to stop on a drive. We go up to Lake George. It's like 4.5 hours. They've got to stop for 30 minutes and have lunch, if not longer, because sometimes you have to wait for a charging station.
But you go up to Lake George? You buried the lead there.
Yeah, we go up to my in-laws have a house up there, so we go up there. That's our vacation.
Diamond Point?
North. We go up north by Ticonderoga. Where there's nothing. There's nothing up there.
Why do I know Lake George? I went to school in Albany. I've skied at Gore.
Oh, okay.
Gaslight Village. I mean, come on. So if you haven't been to Lake George in New York State, which is north of Saratoga, north of Glens Falls, it is awesome. It's a lake, and it's sort of in the mountains. So you've got these very steep hills with trees, deciduous trees, very green around it. And it's kind of a special place, in my opinion. I love Lake George. And once the mountain, you can go up and see the view. And on a clear day, you can see down to Albany.
Is that Mount Marcy? I'm not sure.
I know,
We
but
don't.
right there, there's
I'm
some place you
not
can see,
hiking.
the 50, 60 miles down to Albany on a
Yeah,
clear day.
well, we go to, like I said, we're way north. We're up by Ticonderoga. If you're at the southern end of the lake, Lake George Village is
Yeah.
very much like seaside. It's honky tonk.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like
it's Old Orchard Beach and
that's
Coney Island.
right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
where
yeah.
it goes. And then the further north you go, the fewer people there are because when we hit the exit for the outlets in Glens Falls. The outlets there. When we hit that exit, we have another hour to go before we get to the house. So
I was going
we're
skiing at
way
Gore
north.
one morning in Albany. It was a Saturday or Sunday morning, and there's a public radio station for Ticonderoga that gave the temperature.
There you go.
It was it was one of these cold, calm mornings, and this was somewhere mid 80s. It was 20 below. There was no wind, and I'm going, oh, there's no wind. It won't be bad. I'm skiing. You're making wind when you ski. You're moving. What am I doing? 10,
Right.
15 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour. Oh my God, it was like needles on my face. So I was in college. I had no money. I still went into the little store and I bought myself one of these neoprene face masks.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was the coldest I've ever skied, but just for pure temperature.
Lake George will freeze. I mean, where we are, Lake Champlain's right there. Not that far. It's right there, and you can drive between the two of them, and it freezes. People drive their trucks across it. Let's see. Hold on. Right on Hybrid. That's Tax USA says right on Hybrid. A great show. I have to go. See ya. Thanks. You. We appreciate you joining us. I said what I heard about hybrids is that they want to get rid of those, like in places like Australia, they're getting rid of them. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that either.
Let's talk, before we run out of time here, about Hurricane Idalia. I saw that they're now saying it might be a Cat 3 when it makes land.
It probably will be a Cat 3. I mean, and it was at 100, needs to get to 111. So it's still going through this strengthening period. So here's the good thing about Idalia. I'm always looking for the silver line. One, it's a small storm. I think hurricane force winds extended maybe 20, 25 miles an hour from the center. Two, it's moving fast. I think it was north at 16 on the 5 o'clock advisory. I don't know if they came up with an 8 o'clock one or not just now, so I haven't looked. But when a storm is moving that fast, the likelihood of it making any big turns is little. So it's not likely to make a right turn and hit Tampa Bay. It's going to be far enough off of Tampa Bay. Tampa's getting a glancing blow. They still might get a 4 to 7 foot storm surge, but they have not been hit by a hurricane since October 25th, 1921. So it's been over a century since Tampa's had a direct hit from a hurricane. Where this storm is going to hit in the Big Bend area of Florida is a relatively sparsely populated area. There's not a lot of people. Now, the places that are there, there's going to be devastation. They're like wildlife refuge and stuff there. There's these places, you're going to get a storm surge 10, maybe 15 feet just to the right of the track.
Wow.
And because Florida's pretty flat, if you've been down there, I think Space Mountain was the highest point in Florida or something I read years ago. That water will go several miles inland, knocking trees down, knocking structures down, causing damage that will not be repaired for months or longer.
Yeah.
Like you saw with Ian in parts of Southwest Florida last year. Like you saw with Andrew, if you remember, back in Homestead, Florida in 92. Yeah. It was August of 92. The A storm was August of 92.
Yeah.
So Idalia, and the fact that it's moving so fast, it'll be inland late tonight. It won't have time to get stronger. If Idalia was moving at 6 instead of 16 miles an hour over this water that's in the mid to upper 80s, sky's the limit. This thing probably become a Category 5. Wow. So there are some good things. And also because it's moving fast, it's not going to drop 20, 30 inches of rain. It'll drop 4 to 8, maybe 12. So you'll have some flooding. You'll probably have some tornadoes too, which you get with landfalling tropical systems. But there's a lot of things it's not going to do. So I'm trying to look at the positive, knowing that there will be people who don't evacuate, knowing that people will die. You know what? One of my pet peeves. You ever see the memes where it's like there was like Hurricane Isaac, and they take a picture of Ted Lange from the Love Boat. Remember he played Isaac in the Love Boat?
Saw that.
And they'll put him or when there was Hurricane Cindy, and they've got a picture like little Cindy Brady from the Brady.
Yes, that's hilarious.
While it's funny, it's something I never do because I think people are going to die.
Well,
And I don't want somebody to think that I am so callous that I am making light of the fact of the hurricane's
Right.
name. Part of me appreciates it. Part of me is like, it's just in poor taste because people are going to die. Don't be joking. And because I think sometimes, we try to tell people, what are you doing? It's like an
Right.
EF, it's like an EF2 tornado. Why are you staying? It's not worth it. But no matter what we try, you can't
Mhm.
save everybody. There are going to be people just, is it Darwinism? Are they just too dumb to know? Are they just too proud? Are they too arrogant? Are they too scared? Are they too ignorant? I don't know what it is, but some people just won't go. And no matter how we try, how we communicate, no matter how we plead, there's nothing we
Yeah.
can do other than say, look, should you need rescue, we will not be able to rescue you. We are not going to risk the lives of the
Well,
first responders because you chose not to evacuate when we told you to. So if you survive, we'll get you when we can. I mean, that's all you can tell them at that point.
they did that here at the Jersey Shore. Now, where I live at the Jersey Shore, they had for Hurricane Sandy. Well, wasn't a hurricane, Superstorm Sandy. Beforehand, they said the barrier islands, right? The barrier islands, and then like the little section that comes up out onto Sandy Hook. There's two towns on that little thing there, right? So they
Like
said
the
the barrier
Rockaways in that
islands
regard, sure.
and those two towns are on the point that go out to Sandy Hook, though, because it's not technically a barrier island, it's peninsula. They all had to evacuate. They had an evacuation order. I think it was like on Thursday, and then or Friday, whatever. And then they came back and said, okay, the barrier islands, but not the two towns on the peninsula that goes
Right.
into Hudson Bay. They don't have to evacuate. And there's a river on one side, there's the ocean on the other, so it's skinny. They don't have to evacuate. Then they come around and they change their mind again. Then they tell those people they have to evacuate
So
again.
you know what happened here? This was complete incompetence by the government. And I'll tell you,
Shocking.
I'll tell you what happened. So in the weather world, you may have heard the term subtropical storm.
Sure.
So it's not a pure tropical storm, right? But it's a storm that has some characteristics of a tropical storm and what's called a cold core storm. So there's warm core, low, like the low with the cold front and the warm front. That's a cold core storm. Normally, a hurricane is what's called a warm core storm. Well, these storms, like hurricanes, sometimes especially when they're in the North Atlantic, they transition from tropical to subtropical. The problem is Joe Sixpack has no bleeping clue what that means.
Exactly.
So when you use the word subtropical, oh, that sounds like less than tropical. It's not nearly as much of a threat. The hell it isn't. It's still got the winds, it's still got the waves, it's still got the storm surge, but some A-dub, we'll go back to Joe Pags because I like Joe Pags. Some A-dub decides, oh, we've got to change the classification, and we don't have any rules that say we can keep a hurricane warning up for a non-hurricane, but it's got the same impact. And this is the utter stupidity of people who think black and white and follow a flow chart because it's a gray world. And if you can't adapt, you die. And people died because the messaging sucked, because the Weather Service at the time had stupid rules and a complete inability to change. Now, they're trying to do things, but how long was Sandy? When was that? Like 10, 12 years ago?
2012.
20, all right, so now we're talking, 11 years ago. And they still can't get the messaging right. They've hired social scientists to do all these things and try to figure out, and they still mess up the messaging. They're doing this hazard simplification now where, they're getting rid of freezing rain advisory. They're getting rid of all advisories because they think it's too confusing for people. Advisory, warning, what does it mean? And maybe there is an argument for better terminology, but to me, when I was growing up, Mary, if there was a winter weather advisory, I'd still go out. Yeah, a little bit of snow. I'll go in my car. I'll do whatever. I don't care, right? There's a freezing rain advisory for just a glaze of ice.
That's different.
I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
But if you lose that classification because of this simplification you're going through, I think you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I think the messaging is gone, and people are going to die because you put out some winter statement for freezing rain as opposed to the old freezing rain advisory. And I agree with some simplification, but some things, the pendulum swings too far, and it's just I don't understand the mentality and why. And I've argued this with people inside the Weather Service, and people I respect. I just tell them, I said, you're going to kill people. I truly believe that, and they're hell bent on doing it their way.
Well, what they should do for like hurricane-like storms, they told us Hurricane Sandy was going to be a souped-up nor'easter. I cannot tell you if you live in the Northeast, you know what a nor'easter is. Like you know what it is. You know the town where everything floods.
Had
You
they
know
said
how it
hurricane like,
goes.
would that have gotten your attention better as opposed to
Hurricane,
souped up nor'easter?
hurricane, yeah. But see now, I gotta like I'm staying for a Cat 1. I'm staying right,
You
like
know,
I'm hanging.
I understand that, but as I tell people, Category 1 hurricanes still break things and kill people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm staying for a Cat 1. Okay,
She just blew
so
me off.
I grew up in New Jersey. This is a
Yeah,
part of my life.
yeah,
Now, ever since Sandy, Sandy, because of the messaging, because like, oh, it's a souped up nor'easter. I'm like, nor'easter,
yeah.
whatever. So, we have our 4-day prep that we do, 4 days out from when it's supposed to hit, 3 days, and if it still
Yeah.
we do the 2 day, and that's what we do. So we prepare because we've lived through these things a gazillion times
And
before.
you trust the emergency officials to give you the right information so that you can make
Yes.
plans and take care of it accordingly.
So my husband goes on a business trip because he's like, oh, it's just going to be a souped up nor'easter, and we had put in for a whole house generator and we had to get a variance, all this other stuff. So we had our generator, it was sitting in a warehouse. They were going to come to install it on Monday. That's the day Sandy hit. So we just had our little Honda, generator, because everybody has a generator here. Where you live here in New Jersey, everybody has a generator. It's just the way of life. So we all have our generators. So I have my little souped up Honda, so I know how to run it, and do all that stuff. He's like, if you need it, you know how to work it. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. So he goes. Now, luckily, he wasn't going far. It was just, like the next.
So wait a minute. Let me get this right. The love of your life, your husband, abandoned you during the storm of the century. Okay, keep going.
Well, okay, it was a souped up nor'easter at the time, and we
Storm
did
of the
not have an
century.
evacuation
Yeah,
order. All right.
right.
So he goes. Now, thank God he was like an hour away. That was it. He was doing this thing. It was an hour away. They had this big conference thing. So he's sitting there, and I call him. I think it was Saturday morning, and I'm like, so they came knocking on the door to tell me, and the National Guard rolled in on like Thursday or Friday, but the National Guard's here that's not unusual. Like, how you doing? So I call him, I'm like, so they come knocking on the door to tell you that if you don't leave, that they're not coming to get you. Now they've never done that before. I was like, so I didn't answer the
Yeah,
door
and
because I
write your
knew they
social
were coming.
security number in marker on your arm so
Yeah,
you can identify your corpse. Right.
but because it's a summer only town too, so there's a lot of summer only people. So they were trying to find out where there were people. So I didn't answer the door because I'm like, I'm not getting involved in this. So I didn't answer the door. So then he sees our town's name on the news that now we're part of the evacuation. So they said to him, they're like, you need to go home because the town closed at like 4 o'clock. Like you couldn't get in after 4 o'clock. That was it. You could get out, but you're not getting back in. So he got in. We took the cars to the hospital. It's because they have a big parking garage. Put them on the inside of like the third floor of the parking garage.
I did that
right?
with Hurricane Andrew in '92. I took my better
Smart.
car to New Orleans International. I parked it on like the third or fourth level because I didn't want it to be flooded. I figured the structure was going to survive.
That's exactly what we did. So we have our Jeep, our high Jeep. We're like, if the water's that high, we got bigger problems. And he came in and we hunkered down and we rode Sandy out. We were outside in it at like 9 o'clock at night, but it was crazy. But I got to tell you, I'm kind of glad I didn't evacuate because you couldn't get back into town for days. There was like 3 feet of sand. You couldn't.
Yeah.
There were cargo containers on our road, like so you couldn't get back in. So I'm glad we didn't evacuate because we were here to run the sump pump. So like we didn't lose our water heater. We didn't lose like any of that stuff because
Right.
we were here. So that's why people don't evacuate.
And I get that. I get that. But, as I always say, possessions can always be replaced. People can't. It's just that simple. So
Yeah.
if you have, but there's also a real problem like when Katrina hit, right? Why didn't people leave New Orleans when Katrina was coming? And by the way, Katrina really hit Mississippi. It was the failure of the levee and shoddy construction, criminal
Right.
construction that caused the problems. And you had, over 1,000 deaths because of the flooding. The problem comes in a poor city where people are dependent on their monthly checks. Katrina hit at the end of the month. I think it was I think today's the anniversary of when Katrina hit, actually, on the 29th of August.
Oh, yeah, it is.
And so you have people who may not have had the money to take a bus or train or get out of town. Not that they weren't running buses to get people out, but
they were. Yeah, that's the thing. They were.
But had Katrina hit maybe the 2nd or 3rd of September versus the 29th of August, people have money in their pocket who might not have. At the end of the month, some of these people are still waiting for that September 1 payment. And there's some of that contributes to that too. I mean, New Orleans was also a horrible failure of the city and the state government. You know, they didn't want to close down. The casinos were giving them pressure in New Orleans, and such a tourist town as is. And Blanca was the governor, and she was incompetent up in Baton Rouge. I mean, it was just a failure.
Ray Nagin? Wasn't Ray Nagin?
Yeah, Ray Nagin. And by the way, Ray Nagin.
He's the mayor. Ray Nagin was the mayor.
Kathy Blanca was the governor. Ray Nagin, when I was in New Orleans and working there in the early 90s, he was like the guy in charge of Cox Cable or something. I don't know how he ascended to be the mayor, but he worked for the cable company and something like that. New Orleans is interesting, having lived there. Just a really, really interesting there. By the way, as Greg says, cargo containers, the ultimate finders, keeper, losers, sweepers. I was going to ask you, these people, about the pirates on the trains and the Amazon that they're just like basically bandits or opening Amazon cargo containers on these long trains and just throwing stuff on the side and take what they want. Or if you play Fortnite, I play a little Fortnite. I got them. There are cargo containers that you search for treasure chests, etc. So, were any of these cargo containers open? Did you?
No,
get any loots?
They were mired in lots and lots of sand, so I don't think you could have gotten them open if you wanted to. There was one at one end of our street, there was one at the other end, and we're like, well, we're not going anywhere.
How'd they get them out of there?
I don't know how they got them out. They had to bring in, but because like everything in town was flooded, so we lost the fire department, the rescue squad, Borough Hall, the library, like everything was just, it was all gone. So we actually had fire departments and police come from all over the country, and they came because our firefighters and our police officers all lost everything too. So by
the way, when Governor Christie and President Obama were working together for the people of New Jersey, I was not bothered by that at all. I know some people, and Vivek was giving Christie some crap about it.
I know.
I think that was a cheap shot. I mean, there are other. You want to attack Christie? There are probably more legitimate reasons to do so. But I think in that role as governor, he was perfectly within his realm. I think both men, who at times I have had disagreements with, I think they both acted for the people of New Jersey and for the people of the United States appropriately. And that's that. And there's nothing more to be said. And anybody says, oh, you shouldn't have hugged him, go screw yourself. You're an idiot. It's just a dumb thing to say, because politics is irrelevant at this point. These are people's lives and livelihoods that they need help. They need immediate help. They don't care what your politics are at this point. They just care, what can you do to help them? It's that simple. And when people start to look into things and put more into it, it's like, you're just, God, give it up. That just pisses me off.
Yeah, no, well, honestly, we didn't know anything about that. We knew nothing for weeks.
You were shut off.
We had no clue. We had no idea.
You didn't know any of that. So
so they just took like the snow plows when they just started doing that, and they just started plowing, and then FEMA came in and said that all the sand, that you couldn't put it back on the beach because it was contaminated. So they put it back on the beach.
Well, it isn't contaminated. What happens with the ocean waves? Ocean waves break up oil. So whenever there's an oil spill in the ocean, ultimately it dissipates because of the wave action. It breaks it up. Some of it aerosolizes. I mean, it does naturally degrade, right? But I don't know what other contaminants might have been in the sand.
Who knows?
And then as stuff goes down, it'll go in the water. Maybe not the greatest thing, but if it's inland, right? You ever drink from an artesian well? Fresh water just coming out of the ground. You know what an artesian well is?
Yeah, I do, but I don't think I've ever. I mean, we had well water in Jersey, but
there's enough pressure in the aquifer, and there's a crack, so it just forces the water up. But
okay.
all of that water gets filtered by the layers of rock and sand. And if you've ever had an artesian well, and we had one when I was growing up in Suffolk County on Long Island, this was the coldest, freshest, most awesome water. People would stop with jugs just to fill them up and bring them home.
Right.
I visited recently. There's now a property there with a fence. You can't get to the damn well, unfortunately. But it was
bastards.
Yes. It's the people's well. It's not your well.
Anyway, to your comment about Chris Christie, I will say, and our mayor, like local, they got the streets cleared. They had people come in and they went through all the sand, everything, and they piled it. They just had huge. We had a huge Mount Sandy of all the sand, and then they had like stuff. They had wood, they had metal, they had like they had it all. They were
That's the
separating it all
recycling
out.
station there. Yeah.
Exactly what they did. And then they took the stuff, like all the metal, like the refrigerators, the washing machines, like all that stuff, and that went one place. And I will tell you, Home Depot came in, the Amish came in, Lowe's came in, all the evil corporations, Procter Gamble came in so that you could have clean clothes. They took your clothes and took them and washed them.
Budweiser, for all of their stupidity and problems that they're having, they often, when there's a disaster, they will just can water. They'll just, they'll use their canning facility and have canned water, and they will send truckloads of canned water to disaster areas so that people have fresh drinking water. So, they got beat up enough. I'm going to give them a little bit of love. I think, by the way, did they deserve to get beat up as much as they did? Yes and no. When the old marketing people is like ragging on their own customers, but the tragedy is they had to lay off a couple hundred people.
I know,
which that's a tragedy because this moron in charge makes a bad decision, and it's really she's going to be fine. She has plenty of money, but it's a lot of the other people who aren't with the golden parachute or whatever who have to take it on the chin because of just some utter stupidity. Why would you attack your customer base?
Because she was a 35-year-old Harvard educated, holier than thou liberal elitist. That's why.
It's just stupid.
I just want to say, but my point is that the Red Cross tried to come in, but they couldn't. They only were bringing in dinners, but they had no, because they couldn't hook up to water. They couldn't hook up to anything to cook. But it was Boston Market came in and fed us Thanksgiving dinner.
I've seen Chick-fil-A work on Sundays in disaster areas. But they don't open the restaurant. They'll bring the employees in, they'll cook food, and then they'll bring sandwiches and stuff to people.
And Waffle House does
being a Christian-based company, that's why they're closed on Sunday. So opening to feed people certainly is within that core mission of theirs or core element of them.
And then we had one of the guys who grew up in our town was the coach of the Boston Red Sox. And they threw a Christmas party for us. Food and everything, which is really nice.
Yeah. No, it's interesting how companies react and don't react depending. And that's, it's like people, right? How do you react during times of adversity? That's really character. Oh, who's going up the stairs behind you? Oh, that's my honey. That's my wife.
That's your house.
Hi,
Hi, honey.
Yes, that's the saints in training.
That's the long-suffering wife.
She's not suffering. She's not suffering at all.
So, but the point is that, like, government, FEMA came in and they had our destroyed shed was a big X on a map, like within 24 hours, but there was no food brought in. There was no water brought in. There was all of that was brought in by like Americans who came and dropped it off with the National Guard at the edges of town to be brought in. It wasn't the government who did any of that.
In 1995, I was working in Oklahoma City when the building was bombed. I was a meteorologist there, and I ended up going down to the bomb site on days 3 and 4. This happened on Thursday, so Saturday morning I'm there. And I don't know if it was Saturday or Sunday morning, but the Salvation Army had set up what they call the canteen. And they're feeding all of the workers, the first responders, the people who are trying to go through the rubble, see if anybody's still alive, that sort of thing, getting evidence, whatever they're doing. I don't know. But the ones who are the firefighters and stuff who are going into the building. And you talk about like intense. And anyway, so one of the people in the Salvation Army says, "Hey, come over here." And she tries to hand me a plate of food. I said, No, this is for them. She goes, "No, you need to eat because there are people at home who need to know what's going on. And you're the person telling them what's going on. So you need to be at the top of your game. Means you need to be fed. You need to be alert. Eat this food. It's for you too." And I didn't understand it until she just literally or figuratively beat me over the head with a 2x4 explaining why she's giving me food. But my first instinct was, it's for them.
Right.
For me. And that was you talk about many memories like they were yesterday. I don't need to go to the Oklahoma City bombing memorial. I never will. Right. It's all up here. And if you've never been to a disaster site, it's funny when you are in television, you're a broadcaster first, a meteorologist second. You're everything as a broadcaster first. If you're any decent, if you understand it. you're a broadcaster, a sports person, a broadcaster first, because if you can't communicate, nobody's going to listen to you. You could have the cure for cancer, and if TV is your only way to communicate, and you suck on TV, a lot of people are still going to die from cancer. So I learned this when I was in Oklahoma City, and it's been a valuable lesson for me throughout my career to remember it has to be relatable. And when I think about Oklahoma City, I was talking to somebody yesterday, 23-year-old young lady. I said, "Do you know what happened in Oklahoma City in
No clue.
April 1995?" I said, "So they didn't teach that to you in school?" I said, "A building was blown up by some domestic terrorists because they hated the FBI. And in the process of killing 168, they killed 30 some odd kids in a daycare as well." I was there. Google it, Wikipedia it, whatever. And if you have any questions, ask me. We'll talk about it. But it was just and I've had this conversation with a bunch of people in their 20s who just, for whatever reason, it's not taught. And I think it's an important moment in American history that should be taught.
Agree.
And it pains me. It's like, if they're not teaching that, what are they teaching instead? So, I mean,
well, we know what they're teaching instead. They're not teaching anything that they really need to know right now. But
I can go off in a lot of different directions on that.
Well, this was fun. We have to do this again. We have to do this again sometime. This is a lot of fun.
Surface, Mary.
I know. So for our maiden voyage, but thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it.
You would ask me about this, I don't know how many weeks ago, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm into it.
Yeah, and it worked out. It worked out perfectly. So I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So,
by the way, she gave me very little notice.
Well, you know what? That's James. I love my work husband. He's wonderful, but
we're throwing him under the bus when he's not here to defend himself.
He knows. He knows he's terrible with time management. He knows it. So I have to keep on him. Sunday, are you doing the show on Tuesday? Yeah. Monday, are you still in for tomorrow? Yeah. I'm in for tomorrow. But my boss has been out, so I might be. So then today, so you're doing this wrong. I'm going to be late at best. And I'm like, and there it is. Right? Like, but you couldn't call me to tell me that. So,
well, at least manage your expectations. And I enjoy you. I enjoy your intellect. I enjoy your wits.
Thank you.
And, when we did interact some in DC, it was always a pleasure. And I was only on your show a couple of times. I think down at on the great WMAL, which has a long legacy in DC, well deserved. By the way, do you realize that Channel 7 is now doing weather on both MAL and TOP?
Wow.
WRC is not on TOP anymore. It's Channel 7. They're doing both, which I think that's quite the coup for WJLA.
Yes, so that is.
Talking a little inside baseball DC.
That's right now. Yeah, if you're not familiar, sorry. So, where can people find you? What are you up to? You have anything you would like to plug away?
The only thing I'm really doing right now, haven't been working since January. I actually was a news anchor here in Altoona for 6 months, which was a really interesting experience and much different than sitting on the weather chair. I'm going to do a little freelance weather, WHP, CBS 21 in Harrisburg coming up next month.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm working on my house. I haven't gotten in the basement yet. Playing pickleball. Just trying to figure out, because people say, "Are you retired?" I'm like, I'm not sure.
I
don't know. Because I just wonder, I started in TV in 1989, and I just wonder, am I done with TV? Is TV done with me? I don't know.
Right.
I feel too young. I'm only 57. I say only 57. Some people are like, oh my God.
And for a man in television, you're fine. A woman, you're done.
Well, the hair is not as thick as it used to be.
Doesn't matter. For a dude, it doesn't matter.
So, but God, and right or wrong, I have faced ageism. There's no doubt I faced ageism. Don't use an AOL email. People immediately think if you're using an AOL email, you're ancient and you're not. Seriously, you can be disqualified from consideration for a job using an AOL email. So
or Hotmail.
Just use your Gmail. Get a Gmail account and you'll be fine. That's a little pro tip from your Uncle Howie over here. So I'm doing a few things, but realizing that I'm at a point in life where if the things I'm pursuing don't pan out, I'm still okay. Life's not too bad, So.
Well, good. So
look what Chris wrote. You're the only radio personality that he knows of that has a face for TV.
Thank you, Chris. You said that's all the girls.
And that's why she's the queen. Now you're all over the place. I see you subbing for this person, subbing for that person, and
I
yet there's no nationally syndicated Mary Walter radio show.
No, there's actually no Mary Walter radio show, period. You
So what are
know,
you doing about that?
well, I have an agent, but radio is perpetually 20 years behind the times technology wise. So everybody wants you to move. I'm not doing that again. I'm
Well,
not
no, wait a
doing
minute.
the
You have Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. One's in Miami, one's in Atlanta.
well,
Right? They're doing it remotely. So why the heck can't you do it
yeah.
remotely?
Well, because they went from nobody's to nationally syndicated, and when you're nationally syndicated, of course you do it remotely because you can't be everywhere. You know what I mean? You can't be in all the stations, but no one's knocking down my door to syndicate me. It is what it is. I'm
But you
on
make so
the
many appearances, whether it be on Newsmax or
yeah,
Fox Radio, filling in for this
yeah,
person or whatever the case may be.
yeah.
I mean, which I guess is better
Well,
than nothing, but it's not
as
ultimately
my
your
father
own
used to say,
platform.
someone has to come in second for somebody else to come in first. I'm always second. It is what it is. Whatever.
Are
I
you
think I'm on
are
my
you happy?
yeah, I think I'm kind of over corporate radio. I think the last gig kind of just really poisoned the well for me with corporate
Yeah.
radio,
Well,
you
I have a
know.
friend who worked for a company. I'm
So
not going to mention the company he worked for, but they had one of these ransomware attacks. They were down for God knows how long. They get back up, and the owner still doesn't want to invest in like secure
right,
stuff or a
right.
backup computer system. It's like you just spent months recovering from a ransomware
Yeah.
attack, and you don't want to get like semantic or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, well,
And
and
he's still in radio, by the way, just with a different company,
yeah,
a
well,
smaller company.
radio is also it's an industry run by men for men. It's very sexist. It's a very sexist industry. And I went in so naive, not thinking that exists. And the same thing with television. It's very sexist and it exists. All that being said, tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday, I'm on WPHT in Philadelphia with Mike Apelko filling in for their morning show. So we'll be on from 6 to 10 a.m. And then this weekend on Friday
And Mike
at
does a lot of filling in work too. I hear him all
he
over the place.
does, he does, he does. So this weekend, Saturday, 4:30 p.m., Sunday, 3:30 p.m., Monday, 6 a.m. And I think also Saturday night at 9 o'clock, I will be on the Wendy Bell Show on Newsmax TV.
Okay.
So that airs, like I said, 4:30 on Fridays, I think 9 o'clock Friday nights.
Her radio show
Saturdays.
runs in the Altoona market because she's from Pittsburgh.
Yes.
So they run her on WRTA from 9 a.m. to noon, Monday
Yes.
through Fridays. So
Yeah, she's great. I love
on
her.
her TV show, not her radio show, or not?
I'm not on her radio show. I'm on
By the
her
way, she's
TV
a
show.
former news anchor turned radio host.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I think
She's great. I really
I'm
like her.
pretty sure she worked in the Pittsburgh market. And I find it interesting when I listen to her, because sometimes I think some of her views are a little bit over the top for me, but her delivery, her storytelling, you know what I mean? I met Joel Osteen.
She's good.
You know who Joel Osteen is, right?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I talked to Joel Osteen. By the way, from a moral thing, I not a fan of what he does, but how he does it is unbelievable. I said, "Do you ad lib that?" He goes, "No, I write like 8 pages, single spaced on legal pad." He memorizes the 8 pages, and then he delivers that in just his delivery is unbelievable. Just
Wow.
from somebody who's on TV and read it just from a performance aspect, right? I think the guy's a snake oil salesman, but his delivery is incredible. So I didn't talk to him at all about the church stuff because I wouldn't be able to stomach that. But his delivery, his method. You ever seen anybody like that? You're like, wow, I wish I could be like them.
Sometimes,
Huey Lewis. I saw Huey Lewis years ago on stage, and his stage presence was phenomenal.
I think that's something people have or they don't have. You have it or you don't have it. So, all right, I've got 3 cats who are here who want to be fed dinner, and I have to be up to do a morning show tomorrow, and I have to prep. So
Wow.
We'll definitely have you back.
All right.
You have to come back. You have to come back.
Oh, I passed the audition.
Yeah.
I'll come back. Whenever James isn't available, somebody has to be second.
Yeah, listen, you play your cards right. I'll take your headshot, and EB will make up a special, promo with.
I'll have to
your
put on
head
more
it.
than just a gray T-shirt then. I'll have to
No,
put
I
on
love that
maybe a
you're cash. Sometimes we sip a little bourbon, we'll do a little
gosh.
something, but
I'm
I
I'm
have
in
to be up
I'm in
early
I'm in
tomorrow.
shorts, okay?
Woohoo! Look at that
So
leg. Woo! Look at
not too
that.
much though. Just
Now I have
that's called the tease
now I
in the
have to
biz.
mark it not safe for children. I hope you're happy.
NSFW also, right?
That's right. Exactly.
So you got that special click in YouTube when you
Uh,
put the videos up. It's like, yeah, I
oh,
got
all right.
restricted.
So, all right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. So,
Uh,
catch me on the Wendy Bell Show, PHT, Wednesday, tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday with Michael Pelka on the morning show. And then Monday, I'll be on the Chris Salcedo Show between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. Yes, I am working on Labor Day for you. So, I hope you appreciate it. I'll be in on the Chris Salcedo Show.
how do you keep all of it straight? You just know it. You just know.
Yeah, I
And
do.
that's why she's the queen.
There you go. Thank you so much. Take care. Boop, boop.